A new Department of Justice report out this week is raising concerns about thousands of mentally ill patients in Missouri. The federal investigation claims Missouri is breaking federal law by sending patients to more restrictive facilities than needed. Missouri Capitol Bureau Chief Joe McLean takes us through that report.
The DOJ describes this as, quote, a series of systematic failures by the state. It's alleging that Missouri's breaking the Americans with Disabilities Act by unnecessarily institutionalizing thousands of Missourians with mental health disabilities in nursing homes. The year-and-a-half-long investigation found the state improperly relies on guardianship for those who have resisted mental health treatment. That means appointed guardians often place the person in nursing facilities. This happened to nearly 3,300 Missourians. Most of the patients under 65 years old, and the average stay 3 years.
These are problems that we know exist. It's a good thing that they're being brought to light.
Gina Terlizzi heads Missouri's chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness. She tells me a big part of the problem is a major lack of alternatives.
We really need to look at this as an investment in our community, in our societies, in our state, in the way we want to live as people. So these changes won't just benefit people that are living at these facilities right now. It will benefit the broader community.
Terlizzi says the state is in dire need of a wider range of services.
We need to figure out how we can individualize these responses, because what works for one person is not going to work for the next person or the person after them. We need to make sure that we have these supports in the community.
The Department of Mental Health said it's still reviewing the DOJ's report, and the other state agencies mentioned in it didn't respond to my questions, nor did the state attorney general's office. In Jefferson City, Joe McLean, WGEM News.